Hello, 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 everyone. My name is Matthew Terry, founder and CEO of Suade, and welcome to People in Sales, Not Salespeople, podcast where we analyze the person behind the salesperson. Super excited for our guest this week, Carrie. Carrie, hi.
Hi. Hello.
Hey, hey, hey. Thanks so much for joining me. Carrie and we met, I think you reached out to me over LinkedIn, no? No, no, no.
We met at VC Fest.
Yes, we met at Ohio VC Fest, put on by
Hmm.
Jumpstart. And then you reached back out to me over LinkedIn. And
Yep,
we kind of vibed a little bit. We're like, hey, why don't we
I
do
like it.
have you got a guest on a podcast? That'd be great.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah. So thanks so much for coming on. I'm excited to dive into your past and all the insights you have as a sales trainer,
Yeah,
um, and a salesperson. So yeah, we can dive in. Usually I like to start at the very, very beginning and ask
sure.
people how they got their start in sales. Tell us that origin story of Carrie.
Oh, origin story. Well, I was doing what a lot of college students do. Actually, no, that's a lie. My origin story of sales. I went to actually boarding school for high school.
Okay.
And I really like pizza. And when you go to a boarding school, you could only like kind of eat the food that you're served. But every Tuesday, they offered pizza to people who would make fundraising calls. And
I love this.
so I would I would volunteer to make fundraising calls. And the best part about it is that I would like call through the so you call basically alumni and ask for
Hmm.
money.
Hmm.
And I had the great fortune of having my dad as an alum of the school. So all I did was go to his like class
Right.
and basically call all of his friends.
Remember my
And
dad?
yeah, basically, and that's what I did. And
Wow.
um and I would call them and I like choice called them like I would call them I would call down the list and then
Yeah.
like, a week or 2 weeks later, I would call the same people. And so eventually I like, basically just raised lots of money from his one like class of 64 at Western Reserve Academy.
And got a whole
So
pizza.
yeah, that's really what it would. And then like I just ate Papa John's pizza. So I mean that's in another podcast. But anyway, so that's the first that's like that's my origin story of sales.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's how I get started is
Yeah,
asking alums for money
that's
for a
incredible.
high school.
You got your experience on building lists, making targeted pitches.
Yeah.
You said they had to build an ICP, right? You
Yeah,
knew your
right.
audience.
I was like, hey, I know that you own this company. Like, don't bullshit me. I know I know how much you make. I know. And I like talked just like that when I was,
Really?
15
Okay.
years old. So
Okay.
I'd be like, yeah. I
Oh
even like
my
remember
God.
their names. Yeah. So yeah.
Offer some pizza. I mean,
Hmm.
talk about motive.
That's all you have to do.
Just give me some pizza. I will do anything you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's what like Silicon Valley did in like 2000 and 11 was like, let's do pizza and beer and kegs and have all salespeople sell. It only worked for a couple of years.
Hey,
Ping
I'm
pong
sure.
tables, that's it.
I'm sure it was a vibrant culture though. Uh,
Yeah, which I
but
can talk about too, but
yeah, yeah, I have a whole section around culture and sales because you were in sales trading a lot. I looked
yeah.
at LinkedIn, tons of experience around sales trading. And my first question here was actually, what draws you towards sales training rather than sales itself?
Yeah, so two things. So I started when I think of like my formal, I guess, start in sales, I started at Yelp. So this was back in 2011. And I say I was there for 5 years. So just I use that because when you get 5 years into a company, especially a startup like that, you just say we. So
Yeah.
we were pre-IPO. We had just opened our Scottsdale office, and the culture, talk about a young culture.
Mhm.
I would say, older than most of the people there. So I was about 26. And I was like the adult in the room. But I was like I had started, everyone at Yelp starts at the same level. So they are brought in, they have a very, Yelp has an incredible sales. They used to call it YizDip. They still do, I think, but it's called Yelp Sales Development Program. But
Okay.
everyone starts at the same level. And then when you sell a certain amount, then you get like a bump in pay, but it's all very transparent. And
Mhm.
then you have this like very robust training program. So essentially you always knew where you were at. And it was very, I mean, it was a hard sell. If you know anything about Yelp, like small businesses get really peeved when they have that one star review that they can't get off their page.
Mhm.
So you basically just became the target of all of these,
Small.
yeah, people were like so pissed at you. They thought you were in charge, that you could take it down. But you learned a lot. I learned resilience. I mean, I made 85, 90 dials a day.
Yeah.
I had really good coaching.
Yeah.
And so what I found was, number one, I was an adult in the room. Like I wasn't 22. I didn't go to ASU. I was like an East Coast transplant. Um, and number two, I genuinely love startups. And the one thing about startups and sales is you have to really, I used to say serve the Kool-Aid, but it's like you really have to get the salespeople excited
Mhm.
about the business, because they are your front line. They are basically, they are going to let you know everything you need to know about your customer, right? After founder-led sales, you kind of, as a founder, you lose a little bit of that messaging, a little bit of that feedback.
Mhm.
So, they're the front lines of the customer, the customer loop. So that's number one. Um, and number two is there's a lot of change. So sales reps, if they aren't totally bought in to a business, they can just dip really quickly, and they do,
Mhm.
because they want to make more money elsewhere, and they can make more money elsewhere. So after all, so part of the sales training side is like I loved what Yelp stood for, and so being on the training side was really something like that really meant a lot to me. And then so we haven't really talked about my like recent experience, but I spent the last 5 years as head of sales training and enablement at DoorDash. And it was very much the same. So I joined when we were Series C. We were very much the underdog. I think we had 16% market share. And I mean, now I still look at what we are now. I say we, even though I'm no longer there anymore. But I think now we're at 62%. So there's obviously there was a huge shift when I was there, Series C to, I think we are the most successful unicorn of the decade when it comes to startups. DoorDash, you can look it up. I think it's
Okay.
really true.
I
Um,
I will, because that's a statement.
yeah,
It's quite a
yeah.
statement of the decade.
And I was like number three, like in terms of joining like sales strategy. I was
Mhm.
very early on the sales strategy side. And so, so I saw a lot, I built a lot, I broke a lot, but on the training side, it really is like, I really love sales. I really love understanding the strategy of where a business is going, and then making sure that there's a communication that really resonates with the salespeople so that they can get on board for all of that change.
Mhm.
And so that ultimately what's best for the company is like, what's best for the company is best for everyone. And what's best for the company is growth. So how can we get everyone on board for that growth?
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Love that. There was a lot of good stuff there. And I'm like, wow, we got an hour. And
sorry,
I have more questions. Um,
I'll stop.
I want to dive into founder-led sales. Actually, a little bit after founder-led sales, because you said it's important to make sure your salespeople are on board with
Yeah.
mission. And as a founder myself, who's just now starting to think about building a sales team, I'm thinking about how I build that culture and create that message. How do you foresee, or what advice would you give startup founders on creating a culture that really gets their salespeople pumped up for what they're doing?
I was having a conversation with a founder about this just this week. So I think there are a couple ways to do this really successfully. Um, One of my favorite ways, and I'll actually take, so Tony Zhu, who's the CEO of DoorDash, did this really well. And so it's kind of two parts. One is vision casting. So why are people excited about Suade? Why are people excited about DoorDash? And I joined DoorDash because DoorDash changes local communities. I didn't join DoorDash because it was a great food delivery service.
Mhm.
I joined DoorDash because I really saw it as the answer to Amazon.
Hmm.
And that's like an entirely different conversation that's very interesting. And actually, if you think about it, it's like very close to what's really happening. If you play the tape to the end, it's like very fascinating. But so vision casting is like making sure people understand what the end game is. And number two is having what I call a BHAG culture. So BHAG, which is big, hairy, audacious goals. And it's basically getting everyone bought in to just thinking big and going big
Yeah,
and understanding you're not always going to hit that big number, and that's okay, but you're going to think big and go big.
I like that. In my head, I'm always in my predictable data-driven mindset where I'm like, hey, I made 100 calls last week. I got this many bookings. I can make 200 calls this week and get this many bookings. But I feel like that's not the mindset that you're proposing.
No, I mean it isn't it isn't because to be able to do that as a salesperson and do that happily, I think you have to be bought into, okay, where is this going for me? Like, is this going because we're going to grow and I'm going to be a sales manager? Is this going to be because, do you see what I'm saying? Like, you have to be bought into the end game and you have to be bought in enough.
Right. It's going to be a
The,
$1 company. I'm going to be sales
yeah,
to 50 people. This
exactly.
opportunity. Yeah.
Or like, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think those two are important. So vision casting, like being very clear about where you're going and sharing that with people, and BHAG culture and just being like bullish about it.
Yeah. I like that. It's called BHAG.
Yeah, big, hairy, audacious goals. So you can look it up. I mean, people talk about it, but it's very much like a Stanford Business School thing that people talk about.
Okay, gotcha. All right, thank you for that advice. Thank you for that advice. And let's go down the rabbit hole. I'm very interested in what drew you to DoorDash and their mission, and the changes they make. So talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah, so when I joined DoorDash was we were Series C. We had, I think 16% market share, very small market share. But really what drew me was um, everyone really spoke the same language in terms of the mission to help local economies, and the way that they were going to do it and the way that we were going to do it is basically to help. So what Tony used to say and still says, I just haven't been in those meetings in 6 months, but the narrative goes something like, we're starting with restaurants, but it's, if I'm hungry 3 times a day. I can conceivably order food from my local, Chinese restaurant 3 times a day or 2 times a day because they don't serve breakfast. And I order from the bagel place down the street. And we make it so that the people in the local economy get paid to like deliver the food. We don't have to, on the restaurant side, they don't have the headache of having to have a delivery fleet that, that there's a huge headache on the labor side. And we can bring this incremental revenue because I'm not making the decision whether I'm going to leave my house and go out to eat. I'm making the decision to stay home. And so it's either I'm ordering from this place or I'm ordering from another place. And so that's starting with food delivery. But the greatest thing is like what he says is think about what you order on Amazon. Think about, okay, oh gosh, I live in a 100-year-old house. We actually had a toilet like break. My husband I shouldn't say my husband because I want to be like female empowerment, but it really was my husband. So I'm not gonna lie. But
Don't
my
lie.
husband ordered,
Yeah.
he was working on it and he ordered this part. And in a perfect world, like we would have ordered it from we would have actually ordered it from Ace Hardware. Ace Hardware would have had a dasher come and pick it up from down the road because we want it pretty soon, right? Would have had a dasher pick it up from down the road, and then we would have gotten it within 20 to 30 minutes. And so like that's like helping the local economy. That's helping the local hardware store. Whereas like in reality, what happened was my husband ordered it on Amazon and we
Right.
waited a night because we just, used other bathrooms in our house. So like not a big deal, but like we waited that extra night. But like that's the helping local economies. So it's starting with restaurants. We're now in, 5 or 6 different verticals, and but that's like
The overall.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really what got me bought in and excited. And
Yeah.
what's great about that is that we're not even there yet. Like I was there for 5 years.
With that
I,
in
yeah,
your
with that vision,
right.
and that stood me through lots. And, and we went public and all of that. And I'm, and I'm actually building another business. So, you know,
Yeah, I like it. I like the vision because in Bezos's world, there's just this big one warehouse, right? This big global warehouse that has everything you need. Uh,
right,
you can go and get whatever you want from that, but that doesn't support the local economy and
right.
some of the local businesses. So yeah, I didn't know that about DoorDash's mission.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought they were just, hey, we do good stuff with food. I
yeah,
order my lunch on DoorDash, and that's really like all
yeah,
I've seen them as a company. So yeah, that's awesome. And
yeah,
it's not from a branding standpoint, DoorDash. It's not necessarily a, you know,
yeah,
food-based branding. It's more
yeah,
DoorDash.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, awesome. All right, cool. Well, thanks for going down that rabbit hole. It's important for us as founders to have a vision, and to be able to convey that vision in a compelling way. And it's got to be a big hag vision.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's good. All right, so you've probably hired a lot of people in
I
your
have.
sales world. So tell us what it takes to hire good salespeople.
Um, Couple things. Number one is I think having a really strong process is important. I think having multiple people on the hiring panel is also very important. So I think like trusting yourself is fine, but I think having especially now, I think having different people at the table is
Mhm.
incredibly important. I think having diverse sets, and I think it's like a smart business decision. I'm not trying to say like it feels good. It does feel good and it absolutely should, but like I actually know it's a smart business decision to have different types of salespeople. And so if you just hire the same people, it's not a good, it actually doesn't work for your benefit, because your different clients and your different ICPs are going to respond differently to different people. So always have more than one person, even if it's just you, ask for different people. Whether you have like an advisory board or your board or people that you really trust to be on a panel. I always, when it comes to salespeople, have them sell you something. My God, please have them sell you something. It can be something basic. It can be a pen. It can be, something very basic, but have them sell you something. Um, and then what I always say, so one thing that we did at Yelp, which I really loved, was there was a set of 3 interviews. And in the second interview, they sold you something. And in the third interview, and they gave you feedback. And in the third interview, they basically you sold it again, and the intent behind it was to see if you implemented the feedback.
Right.
So if you want to harness a culture of like a feedback culture and like implementing feedback,
Mhm.
I think having a way where someone can show you how they implement feedback is very important.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't think that resumes are as important as, someone's background, especially in terms of sales and what level you hire people at. But I think SDRs come in all shapes and forms. Um, I think people who are very willing to be scrappy are incredibly important. People who are intellectually curious, you can't teach curiosity.
Right.
And you as a founder, especially if you're like growing a business, you cannot you do not want to be the person who gives someone like the box to hang out in and expect that, like, you want them to kind of like draw outside the box. You want them to find their own box. So
Mhm.
you're looking for the person who is curious enough to like push the boundaries of what their expectations are.
Yeah.
And not just do exactly what, because those people will be the bane of your existence, because they will hit exactly their number, nothing more, or they will always be like, oh, but you said this, but you said, and you will like not sleep anymore. I mean, it will just, and so, I don't know if so do not just hire like, make sure you have multiple people in your, hiring queue, or, having multiple. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Number two, make sure that you have them sell you something. And if you care about implementing feedback, make sure you give them feedback and expect them to implement it. And then number three, um, make sure that they are intellectually curious,
Yeah.
and that they express some amount of intellectual curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see how that could be a headache if someone comes in and is just doer and just
Well,
does exactly what you say. There's
yeah,
no
and I
creativity.
would say, like, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, no, no. It's good. I just see that. I can see that being helpful later down the line.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say there are roles that's very good in. I would
Mhm.
say sales is not that role.
Yeah, especially like if you're first time, like if your company is bringing in their first salesperson, you're gonna
Yep.
put that curiosity in business
Yeah,
inside.
you need that. You need, because you can't do your job and then push the boundaries of that person's job. Like,
You have to
you
be
want them to bring something to the table. You're hiring them for a reason.
right, right, self-led curiosity.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something that I actually haven't thought of, and that was the panel.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't, if I'm going out hiring people, I should not be the only person listening to them, watching them. I should have a group of advisors, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I would at least ask one or two other people to interview them on your behalf. So like, you can absolutely, should absolutely, but then also have some sort of like objective scorecard where you are able to put in notes where you can say, this person, and I mean, there's a couple of different ways to do it. You could do like a point system. I mean, it really just depends. Don't over engineer it. Like, if it's your first or your, like, there's no reason to over engineer it. Some of this is from like a scaled perspective. Like, if you're hiring a bunch, like, and we did some crazy, like, yeah, like,
Crazy
I mean,
hiring.
yeah, oh yeah, we did like experiments. Like,
Oh,
at
right.
one point at Yelp, we did an experiment where we didn't actually look at anyone. It doesn't matter. I don't even know if I can, but it was just so, I mean, we
Now
really,
you got me curious.
mm,
Maybe after, maybe after.
maybe after, yeah, maybe
Oh
after.
man, so crazy. Okay, so sell me a pen.
I don't think I can. I mean, why do you, how do you get information down?
Um, right now on my phone, or like I'm taking notes on a Word document right now. Yeah,
Okay. How do you remember things?
yeah, just in my head. I
Just in your head?
Yeah, I just memorize it. Writing it does help,
Oh, okay.
you know.
Do you, okay, so when you write something down, like when you're taking notes in your, I wish I could like change my camera, how the angle is. So I make notes. I have notes on my computer that I type. And
Mhm.
then when I'm in the middle of a conversation, I typically, like, important points, I'll typically write down, so that I remember it.
Right.
And so what I was trying to understand is like, if you do that, like to remember, do you do that?
I don't. I
Okay.
yeah. I
Is
wish I
that just not how you remember things?
it is. I so writing is the best way that I remember things.
Oh, okay.
It's good, but I don't do it often. I
Do
should.
you know are you like are you married? Do you have like a significant other?
I do not. No.
Okay. Do you have like a sibling or something like that?
Yeah, I have a sibling.
Okay. Do you know what their birthday is?
My sister's birthday is August 10th. My
Okay.
brother's birthday is December 20th.
Oh, okay. Do you have a parent?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have their do you write them down or do you just remember them?
Their birthdays?
Yeah.
I just remember them. My
Okay.
birthday is her iPhone password, so I guess I should.
That's smart. That's smart.
And my dad's birthday, I know it because it's very close to July 4th.
Oh,
Yeah,
when's your dad's birthday?
July 5th.
Oh, my dad's birthday's July 5th too.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. He
Oh,
used to say like July 4th was his like public, and then July 5th was like, the private family celebration. So
yeah, I love
it's
it.
everything you need to know about my dad, by the way. Really humble guy.
My birthday week.
Yeah, basically. Well, I was gonna ask like how you remember that stuff because you should probably write it down. But and if that's how remember things, you better write it down. And for you to do that, you need a pen.
Pen. And I
You
just
need a pen.
have a pen.
You need a pen. And that's how you sell a pen. But I mean, I think like, but the whole point is that you would then give me feedback. You would say, like, oh, that's, like that was, you kind of lost me in the middle. Like, why did you keep asking me birthdays? And I'd say, good point. I kind of went down that rabbit hole and I probably shouldn't have talked about my dad. Like, or if I was actually really good, I would have shut up because I wanted this job. And then the next person, do you see what I'm saying? And then they would
Yeah,
say, okay, sell me this pen. And then like I do it and then I don't go down a rabbit hole.
that was good. No, it was
And
good.
then you say like, oh, you're coachable.
Yeah, the biggest thing, like I was like, if she asked me if I have a journal or anything to write down, she's got me on the journal and the pen.
Oh, do you have a journal?
Oh, that's the biggest thing.
Oh,
Like I would write more stuff down, but I don't really have the
oh,
means
you should just buy that
and a pen.
and a pen. I don't, well, I have lots of pens. I like pens, but, um,
But
yeah,
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Like have them actually, sell you a pen. You give the feedback and see if they implement the feedback.
yeah, and because really what yeah, you want them to be like decent at selling the pen, but really what you want them to do is implement feedback. And that's if you have like any sort of coaching culture. If you expect them to be like a damn good sales rep in the beginning, then like maybe then it's different. Then you want them to really sell you the pen, sell it really well, and you're expecting them to bring numbers and that sort of thing. And you better have a good comp plan to be able to like take that sales rep.
Right. Right. Okay. So you hire this person, say they sold you the pen, they did great. What sort of mistakes or things people should look out for when it comes to training and bringing people on to the sales team?
Yeah. So a couple things. One is you always want to have an onboarding process. And you really want to be well thought out about this. So don't live in a cage of your own creation. So like you want to create some sort of accountability. But you don't want it to be so much that you're basically living, oh my gosh, like I'm drowning in my own accountability maze. So as a founder or like as like a VP of sales, you want to understand like what are the things you really care about, and then how do you make sure you hold them accountable to that? From a starting point, I would always say make sure that you have your language down tight.
Mm,
So what I mean by that is like if you have SDRs and your expectation is SDR set appointments. Well, what is an appointment? What do we define as an appointment? Is it with an NDM? Is it with a DM? Is it, is it a is it a call? Is it for a pitch? Like you really want to think everything through so that you can communicate very clearly to this group of people. And then you want to have some sort of CRM that backs you up that
Mm.
you can then pull data from. Now, if you don't have that, that is fine. Live within Google Sheets. Make a Google Sheet where you clearly outline what you want them to do. Um, and then what I would say is from the training side, establish like, they're not going to run day one. So what is like the progression? What is the crawl? What is the walk? What does that look like? Is it, do you expect them, like, do you give them lead lists? No. Okay. So their first week or like week on the phones might actually be vetting. It might actually be like really understanding the ICP. So like what is
Mm.
everything about the client? What do you want them to really understand about your product? And really understanding that. Do, obviously role plays and then get them vetting so that the next week they can start reaching out and then set expectations. Okay, so for the first, 2 weeks, expectations are not on appointment set, they're actually on, dials. And I know we were laughing about this last week, but like, don't make it too easy. You want to have, as long as there's enough in their territory, enough and know enough to know what enough is, right? Like do that homework, but like don't hold them to like a fluffy number.
Yeah. Yeah. One meeting every month, please.
Yeah, we're not doing that, right? So like figure what that out, figure out what that is. And then what I would always say is be very, very clear. So I talked to um an old friend of mine who also founded a company last week and we were talking and he's like I've just had a terrible day so far, and he told me the thing that like is kind of the worst thing to hear from a sales perspective, and it's like I had to fire someone and they had no idea it was coming. And like that to me like breaks my heart because from a training perspective, like you should never ever be in a position where you have to let someone go and they have no idea. You want to make sure that you're clearly communicating expectations where they understand. And even if those expectations aren't like, again, they have to, crawl before they
Right.
walk, right? So like if it's dials, make it dials. If it's appointment set, make it appointment set. If they're full cycle salespeople, appointment set, great. If it's pitches, then make it pitches. If it's then closing, make it. Do you see what I'm saying? But like build it, communicate it, and then make it very transparent to them.
Mhm.
Um, the pitfalls that people run into is that they do not have data set up to be able to communicate that out. So you cannot hold them accountable to a number that they cannot see, that they cannot have access to. That is not that's not okay.
Yeah.
And it can get you in like I think I shouldn't say it can, and I think legal hot water. Who knows? I don't know. I have some.
If someone were to sue, is that where you're going with
Yeah,
this?
I'm just saying like you've got to be like you want to make sure that you're communicating but also giving them the tools to say like this is where I'm finding this information. Here it is. I'm being transparent with you. Um so yeah.
That's good. Um, it would just be unfortunate if you were at a job and you didn't have the data, you never got pulled into a one-on-one saying, "Hey,
Right.
you're not, performing as well as you wanted to," and then all of a sudden you're just let go.
Yeah,
That
and I would say like I mean to play devil's advocate, I'm sure there's like, you know, like if you're not selling and you're a sales rep,
there's
pretty
probably something in your head like,
yeah, like you're not, yeah, like especially if your like comp is like heavily geared towards selling,
right,
which, if it should be. So, that should, but at the same point, yeah.
yeah. So you talked about setting goals. There, let's talk about this first. Some startup founders don't know how to sell. So they don't
Yeah.
know what to set. So would you suggest a startup founder who maybe just raised 2 million, they're doing
Hmm.
They just did that. Now they want to hire their first salesperson. Would you advise them to like don't hire that first salesperson, but go out and sell yourself first?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I really think that there is a lot of value in founder-led sales for as long as founder-led sales can hang out, and be like make it make sense. I don't know, like I know obviously when you raise, there's a huge pressure to, get money back and, like VCs want to see that growth, right? But you know your product better than anyone. Um, I think that there's so I think yes, but at the same point, there is, and frankly, this is like kind of where we index towards like the business that I'm building right now, which is like helping founders and just in general startups with sales strategy. So what it looks like to what it looks like to be successful to reach that next stage of growth. What I see, or what I see a lot, is that founders, they hold a lot close. Understandably so, they hold a lot close. However, when it's time to let that go, they want to either give everything away. So they try and teach sales everything about the product, when in reality, that's not necessary. Sales reps need to know, like, let's say a product is 10 feet deep. Sales reps need to know 5 feet deep to be successful. I don't think they need to know every gory detail of every inch of this product. In fact, I think it actually helps a lot to not know, because they don't fall into these like holes and then like try and talk themselves out of it. They just don't walk into them in the first place.
Right.
Right. So there's that. And I think, so that's number one. Number two, when it comes to bringing on, the first sales rep, I do think that a lot is put on goals. And so, do think that there needs to be a conversation about like OTE, so on target earning, and a period of time when like a salesperson just earns on target earning, whether it's for the first 6 months as you figure it out. Like there needs to be a conversation and an agreement where like we're trying to figure this out. I need you to like be in it to help figure it out.
Gotcha. So it's a collaborative effort for that first.
Yeah, I mean, and that what that does is it kind of frees it up, especially when you have like that capital to be able to do so. It frees it up to like have a two-way conversation about like, okay, does it make sense to do it like this? Like this actually is, it does take 6 months to close this because we're doing more enterprise level stuff as opposed to SMB. Like it enables you to buy a little bit of that movement.
Mm-hmm. And just support upfront collaboration and keep that energy and culture down the line. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
it can be killer.
100%.
Now you have been saying many different, I won't call them buzzwords, but just nomenclature things around how to describe sales activities.
Yeah, tell me which
And
ones and I can define them.
like OTE, I know them. I know
Oh,
them.
on target. Yeah.
My question is when it comes to those things, because there's like SQLs, MQLs, right? Booked meetings. There's so many different ways to name things. How important is it for an organization to define what they name what and like have
Very,
that in the CRM, in the training?
yeah, very important.
Very important.
Very. Yeah. So at DoorDash, we had what's called like the DoorDash dictionary. My team was in charge of, we call it the DoorDash wiki, but it was basically the encyclopedia of all things DoorDash. And in it, it had a dictionary where it had all the acronyms. And that was something that we introduced day one. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because I worked in an organization where there were some enterprise salespeople that came in and some startup salespeople. And the enterprise salespeople were talking about SQLs and MQLs, and all the startup people are like, what are you talking about? You sound so, enterprisey.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And there was this friction in nomenclature in what we called things where it was almost like political. It's like,
Yeah, and it's
are
weird
the
because you're
MQL?
like, yeah, and I don't, and sometimes I shouldn't say sometimes, I definitely, whenever I say things like that, I don't mean it in a way that's like, oh,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's like your own, it's your own kind of like your own language, and then yeah, bringing other people along. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Super interesting.
And
Go
yeah,
ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, and I've definitely been on the other end where I'm like, and I'm also the queen of asking like the question that's like, what does that mean?
It's
What
good.
is that?
Good curiosity for you.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, and it's always like something like really like, oh, for sure. Yeah, I definitely knew that. Definitely knew that.
Right, right. No, it can get crazy out here when it comes to nomenclature and acronyms. But again, if you're not clear on communication, there could be this friction point, which brings me to the next topic I wanted to talk to you about, which was culture in sales.
Yeah.
Specific, just talk us through like what makes, we're going to go negative this time. What makes a bad sales culture?
So last night I went to this panel. It was amazing. It's called Together Digital, which is like this women's networking group. And there was a panel of all these incredible women. And one of the things that, and afterwards, a group went out to well, they call it drinks, but it turned into dinner. And one of the women talked about like performative, like almost like performative sales. So I think number one, there's no right way to answer this question. So you ask this question and people will say different things. Like there'll be people who say, well, there's a lot of people who were like in sports and they're very competitive. So sales culture should be competitive. I will tell you, I was on the Ohio State crew team. I'm a highly competitive person. I don't respond well to like, I'm an adult too. Like so I think there's a little bit of I'm not sure how to answer this is my I will tell you how I feel.
Tell me how you feel.
I think the best way to create a culture is to lead from the back. So, I think I have never expected my team to do something that I haven't done myself.
Mm.
Um, when I say I, was head of training enablement at DoorDash for 5 years, that's also code for like for better part of 4 of those years, I was like putting together trainings. I was running, like bi-weekly onboarding sessions. I was, doing coaching with reps. Like it wasn't something that I was like hanging up on this like high pedestal, like, oh, do this, do this. It's like I've done it. I know how it feels. So I think a culture where the sales manager, the sales director, the sales VP is on the phones, understands what it's like to sell is the best manager, the best leader you can have. So that's number one. I think number two is having someone who is a little bit vulnerable. So like not everyone is, I think like for a long time, and I've had wonderful managers in like very competitive places that I really like gelled really well with, but like literally the team next to me, I would be like, I would never be on that team. Like, woof, woof, woof. Like, I mean, it's not
Not your
me.
fault. Right.
It's
It's
not,
not you.
like I wouldn't, like, I would literally like kind of roll my eyes and be like, okay, well, I'm just going to make another dial here. But like, so I think again, people respond differently. But I think managers and a culture that values transparency and that values like a sense of like realness. So like especially in a startup, where let's say you're raising money and it's really tough and you need to, try and pivot and you have to get some like you have to have equity within the team, meaning like you need them to believe in you. You got to give them something. You got to be real with them so they can be real with you and give that back. And I think that's so, so, so freaking important to be successful. So I think that looks so different in lots of different ways. And I think the third thing is whenever I was head of a team or like even doing new hire onboarding and I was giving feedback, I always asked them how they liked to be managed or how they liked their feedback because I never wanted to assume that they like things a certain way. So like if someone responded really well to like getting shout outs in Slack, I wanted to communicate with them like that.
Mhm.
But if that wasn't going to fire them up, there's no, I'm not going to like go, do you see what I'm saying? Like I wanted to meet them where they were and like help them where they could, where they would respond.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important, but it takes a lot as a leader to also give of yourself to say like, I mean, like everyone that I manage, they know that I have an 8-year-old. They know that my husband is a math teacher. They know that like I have a dog that runs around and like, and I'm not perfect. And,
Right. Yeah.
like, and they're okay with it because after all, like that's, because we're all human and, my expectations. So I think there's that. I also think that you need to, this is also very important, is you need to be better than them. Meaning that like sales is can be hard. You better be reading up on you better be bringing them what they don't know and helping them and pushing them. Like you can't just be like pushing them from behind and saying go go go. You also have to be like, "Hey, I read this great book." Or like, "Hey," and not like all the time, not like but every once in a while be like remind them why you're the boss. Remind them like, oh, let me get in on this call or like, and have the confidence to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop talking.
I like it when you go on your talks because there's a lot of good nuggets in there that I'm writing down and I'm keeping for my own self. So I feel like I'm getting free sales strategy from you. So thank
Anytime. I'll send
uh,
you a check,
right. I'm gonna
a
get a
bill, not a check, a bill.
invoice after this. Lead from the back is important because if you've been there and done that, you'll understand how to speak emotionally to the people that you're now coaching or now training or now who
Yeah.
and just being able to sympathize, like, yeah, I've been there. You gotta make another call.
Yeah. I mean, there
How
it
it is.
is.
So that's really important. And vulnerability, transparency is is always good. And I love that I started doing this actually. I like the point you made around asking the person how they want to be managed, how you like to be taught, how you like to learn, asking them what their preference is because everyone does have a different preference. And it's so easy for you to be like, okay, well, this is how I would like to be taught or managed. I want shout outs, I want to be pushed, I want to be yelled at. So let me do the same thing for this person.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their own it's like personality type and Enneagram for how they want to be.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's good. And then being better than them. I've started reading the books, watching the videos. Most
Yeah.
of my product, I digitize that.
Yeah.
It's really important for you to be like, hey, I just heard this on your sales call. I read a book, and this is how they overcame this objection and give that nugget and help the person continue to grow and grow.
Yeah.
So good nuggets there. I appreciate
Yeah, of
that.
course. Anytime.
So we have 9 minutes here. I want you to school us a little bit on some sales training. You know, give us like the Carrie sales strategy.
Oh my God. We were talking about this last week. Oh my God.
Give us a one-on-one, just wow us with some sales strategies real quick.
I'm nervous now.
Just like one or two you feel like this is a great way to overcome an objection, or like how you start a sales call, or like any sort of training nugget you can give the people. Share the wealth.
Yeah. I don't know if I have anything that's like really like, oh, damn, that's a good line. Um, I think really it's like being a person connecting with a person and don't lose sight of that. And I think it's really easy when you sell a product to forget that you are a person connecting with a person. Um, so I really think that's, and you're selling to the person. So like you have a product, but you're selling to a person and that person has a problem. And whatever problem that is, you got to make sure that your product solves that problem that's personal to that person, but it's just a person to a person.
Mhm.
So just read people. I mean, that's all it is. I'm not sure that's a nugget that you can like take but it's really fundamental. So I think that's number one. I think number two is fucking grind.
Hmm.
Like that's not, I think like I have talked to more founders, more salespeople, and people just they're like, oh well, this drip doesn't work, or oh this, and I'm like, just go, like just pick up the phone. Don't be afraid of being hung up on. Like, oh well, I don't want to burn bridges. You think that person's gonna remember you?
Right. No one's gonna.
Like, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just trying to say that like at some point, like it's sink or swim. You've got to do the leg, you've got to do the work.
Mhm.
And the work sometimes equals opening up LinkedIn and just going through and sending messages
Right.
and being like, hey, what's up? I noticed this. Would
Mhm.
you be, and what you'll find is that if you take the time to be a person connecting with a person, then you might actually be successful doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can make excuses all day.
Yeah. I mean,
Right? Like, oh, I don't want to be, I don't want to think, da 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 da. Like at the end of the day, you're making excuses. You don't want to do the job, and if you're not for the
yeah.
job, you're not going to get money. You're
Well, and I would say like, sorry, but like, and with an asterisk, it's like if you're a founder, like, then you like this is your business, like, and this is like what's in like don't get out of your own way. Like you've got to like trust yourself enough that your product is good enough that you need to like do
yeah,
it.
yeah. And even if your product isn't good enough, you won't know that until you
Exactly.
right? And cold calling and cold outreach isn't about how good your product is. It's about how good you are at conveying the value of a meeting. So that's
Yeah.
just a message. So that's not even your product. No one's looking at your product yet. You just got to get that message right. What's going to
Yeah.
that's important to figure out. And then when you're on the discovery call, the negotiation calls, then you might get some pushback like, oh, I needed to integrate with, or oh, I needed to blah, 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 blah. And it's up to you to figure out, okay, do I go back and build more, or is this
Yeah.
objection that I can get
Exactly.
close? So,
Or is this actually what the person needs? And like, can
right,
I easily build that? Because all these other people have said it too. Like maybe that's the what I really should be building.
right. Is this thing over here? And you won't know that
Yeah.
until you talk to the customer and figure out
Yeah.
how to talk to the customer. And I think the point you made about just having high EQ and being a person who connects with a person is something that needs to be iterated over and over and over and over and over again, because it's
Well,
so easy for us to be product pushers and to say, "Oh, I have a product and it does this, so let me just tell you about what it does and just keep talking until you figure out how you resonate with my product." Then
yeah.
buy it. That's really not good sales practice.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome. Do you have favorite sales strategies, favorite sales books?
So I Challenger Sale is one of my favorite sales books. And what I would say is because was much more, if you've read it, I was in my head much more of like the relationship builder. So it really pushed me to be much more of the challenger in like a really good way. And I really enjoy kind of teaching that sort of methodology to the right groups of people, because it really pushes, I think, like if you can teach it as a way to open people's minds from like, I want to be a relationship builder. Well, really, like for you to do that, you've got to make sure that you're bringing. So, one of the things that the Challenger Sale does is it talks about teach, tailor, and take control. And I really love like the teach and the tailor, like teaching. So understand that the person that you're talking to knows less about what you have to offer, and that as long as you have like a genuine, and that's why I was saying curiosity is so important, but like as long as you know a lot about your industry and what you're bringing to the table, like you can be a real value to them. And so like that's the piece on the challenger side that I really love. And the tailor piece is like the EQ piece. Like that's the like, I learned all this stuff about you and I know that like this is really going to help your problem that you told me. That's your that my product can help. So, yeah.
because I actively listen to you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So that's like, so I think challenger sale, everyone's talking about medic or med pick, and I would say absolutely, but it's more of like a framework of making sure you have your bases covered, because you don't want to like go through a 6 month, procurement process and realize like you never asked about the actual like paper process.
Mhm.
So like I think that's, but I don't, that to me isn't really like a true sales methodology. I think to like plug my business for a minute, I think what I do is I work with businesses on what works best for them, and not assuming that like there's a lot of training companies. Like I was talking to someone who used to be on my team, and she was telling me that they just paid Sandler $227,000. And I was like, and nothing against Sandler. Oh no, I'm gonna trash Sandler. I have been Sandler certified twice, and their content is garbage. It's the same content that they've had for 30 years, and that they print paper because they have a name, and there are so many better ways to do it, and it's bonkers. So for businesses that don't have the $227,000, or even those businesses that do and want to be slightly more efficient, working with businesses that have slightly, I don't know, let's call it more EQ, um, they can work with businesses like mine to really understand, okay, what makes sense for their business, instead of saying like, oh, I want all of, because spin selling is what's going to sell my product. When reality, like, your individual sales reps are going to sell your product. Understanding your individual sales reps will sell your product more, and giving them a frame and like a methodology to hang out in is important for coaching, and absolutely should be done. But like spending an arm and a leg and like buying a house with that training, I mean,
For like
geez.
2 weekends worth of training for whatever amount, and then you just leave and just
I
expect
mean,
all the information.
when
That's
when she told me that, I was writing it down. It's written down
and
because I have the pen that you
the
need.
pen. Ah, I need the
I
pen.
have the pen that you need, but I was like $227,000.
I should be charging that.
That
Yeah,
was, yeah, exactly. That was, I think that was more expensive than my first house. Like, come on.
it's insane, and that speaks to the bad. I won't say bad part of sales, but in sales you can overcharge and create this fantasy value of something that really isn't as valuable as it is. So, it's the dangerous part of some sales. But anyways, you spoke a little bit about my next question. I have three last questions because we are like at time now.
Oh, it's fine. I can go a little over.
That's good. First question of the last three is, what are you up to nowadays? Give us the pitch.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So, um, left DoorDash in June,
Mhm.
took a long nap, aka played a lot of tennis, and spent my summer in Massachusetts. In September, I started having conversations with businesses, realized that I didn't want to do what I had already done. Had worked with an executive coach a while back, on this plan to create my own business. And in my head, I needed to do it in 3 to 5 years. And I was in this conversation with someone where I basically was like, why am I waiting to like do this like in 3 to 5 years? Why don't I just do it now? So that conversation was, and there's a lot more color there, but I'm like trying to be short. So, that was a Thursday. And then by the next Monday, I turned to my husband and I was like, hey, can we just be frugal for like a little while longer? Because I really just want to start my own business. And he was like, oh yeah, of course, I got you. So I started Innovate Growth Partners was born. I bought innovategrowthpartners.com. I created a
Oh,
website. Do not look at it. I actually now have like a web person who is
okay.
like actually working on a real website for me. So there's that. But yeah, so what I do is I work with businesses on helping them get to their next milestone. So there's three pillars. The first is what I call like founder coaching or founder led sales. And it's really helping founders with what their sales conversation sounds like. I help them with their if they are raising money or trying to raise money, I help them with their pitch deck. I help them really harness, not falling into the traps of which their product has,
Mhm.
to communicate the value. So that's number one. Number two is, it's kind of a lazy way to say it, but it's fractional sales strategy. So we work with slightly larger businesses that have funding, that need help with sales strategy, that needs help with like creating SDR teams, creating sales teams, creating onboarding content, creating a sales methodology, and like what their sales methodology should be, what their sales strategy should be. Why are those two actually different things? What that should look like. And then the third bucket is really like change management and working with slightly larger companies. So that bucket is, more and more businesses are becoming more lean on the enablement side. Understandably so. I actually think it's a really great move to create efficiency. I'm not probably a very popular person in the enablement world for saying that out loud, but I do think that AI has changed how we, as enablers and as trainers, how fundamentally how we do our jobs. And
Mhm.
I do think when there are huge like software transformations, for example, a lot of change management goes into that. And so the third pillar is really helping businesses with those big change management pieces. So communication strategy, making sure they have the training covered. If they're doing like a sales kickoff, helping them with the sales kickoff, that sort of thing. And all of this is, I physically live in Cleveland, Ohio. I am if you can't tell, I'm a woman. I I genuinely want women to run the world.
Yes.
So like there's also like a very like other ulterior motive of like running the world and that sort of thing. But
Well,
I live in Cleveland. I love Cleveland. I moved back from the West Coast to Cleveland. So I really love just pouring back into the Midwest.
mhm.
And yeah, and so that's what I'm doing right now. Um, and I've got a couple of like really exciting projects on the horizon when it comes to investing in female founded businesses and other, female like leadership and speaking groups and that sort of thing. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome. All a load of things
a
and
load of things.
a lot of things. Super excited for your future and
Thank you.
all the things that you're going to help other businesses do and create and all the value you can add. Just the world, honestly, the Midwest.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Yeah. Second question.
Okay.
What does it take to be a good salesperson?
Curiosity. That's it. Genuine curiosity about the person you're talking to.
Awesome. All
That's
right.
it.
Sounds good. Last question is how can people get a hold of you, see your content and, get more of your strategies?
Yeah. So I am pretty like all over LinkedIn. So I'm Carrie Aguilar on LinkedIn. My email is carrie.aguilar@innovategrowthpartners.com. And that's with an eight. So it's INNOV and then the number eight, growthpartners.com. And then my website is innovategrowthpartners.com as well. And you can get me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for hopping on the show. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope you got a lot out of it
Thank you
and
guys.
cheers.
Yay.